Designed by Alexander Yakovlev, the Yak fighter was a fast, maneuverable fighter that was simple and reliable in design. Before the war, Yakovlev had designed a series of successful sports aircraft, but found praise from the government in the military field in his Yak-4 light bomber. This aircraft showed the potential of the Klimov M106 engine, and the Russian Design Bureau commenced a project to mount this power plant in a fighter. Yakovlev was competing against two rival designs, the MiG-3 and Lag-3, but Yakovlev's project had begun before these other designs, meaning it was closer to a finished product. Though it struggled through its development with overheating issues and an excess of weight, the end result, named the Yak-1, was a solid fighter. The Yak-1 was still being tested after production had begun, which caused serious problems in the factories as changes in the design constantly interrupted their work. Shortages of vital components like propellers and radiators caused further problems. One test pilot was killed when he violated the test flight plan by attempting 2 barrel rolls at low altitude, but this didn't deter the designers. Over time, the design was finalized and production could run virtually without interruption. Compared to its main opponent, the Bf-109F, the Yak-1 couldn't climb as fast, and while its turn time was similar, it lacked automatic flaps and had a higher stall speed. Over time, the Yak-1 was developed into the Yak-7, Yak-9 and Yak-3, the later variants offering excellent agility and speed. The Yak-9 has the distinction of being the most mass-produced Soviet fighter of all time, with nearly 16,800 constructed, and it was also the first Soviet fighter to shoot down an Me-262. The Yak fighters proved to be dependable, effective aircraft that were popular with pilots and respected by their opponents. The first variant in-game is the 7B, Tier 2 battle rating 2.7. The Yak-7 began life as a 2-seated trainer, but designers found it made a better fighter than the Yak-1. The in-game variant is the Model B, which has a slightly reduced wingspan to reduce drag, and a simpler landing gear system. It's powered by the M105 PA V12, developing 1050 horsepower. It's armed with a single Shevak 20mm and twin Berezhin 12.7mm, which were originally twin Shikaz 7mm in the A version. Pilots reported that it was usually as agile as the 109, but it was slower in the vertical plane. The radiators created too much drag, according to their experience, and the canopy glass was low quality. They also felt that the engine wasn't powerful enough for an aircraft of this weight. Next is the 1B, battle rating 3.0. This was a revision of the original Yak-1 design, and incorporated a number of design cues from the Yak-7B. The new M105 PF engine developed 1180 horsepower, it had increased armour, and a new control stick based on the Bf-109s. It also had a fully retractable tail wheel, and improved engine cooling. Next is the 9T, Tier 3 battle rating 3.7. The Yak-9 was a lightened Yak-7, and it mounted the M105 PF, the same engine as the 1B. The airframe was made of a new light material called duralumin, which reduced the overall weight of the aircraft. The 9T was armed with a NS 37mm cannon in the nose, which was designed primarily to engage ground and naval targets. The cockpit was moved 15 inches back to compensate for the heavier nose. The gun added 130 kilos of extra weight over the Shevak, which slightly reduced performance. It saw sustained use over the Black Sea against German shipping. Next is the 9K, which mounted a 45mm NS-45. This used a distinctive muzzle brake, which was the first Soviet aircraft-mounted weapon to use a muzzle brake. This was needed to dampen the huge recoil of this cannon, which was even greater than the 37mm. Firing the cannon at low speeds could result in loss of aircraft control, but this isn't actually modelled in-game at this time. The cannon was of course even more powerful than the NS-37, but the gun and ammunition was heavier, so much so that the performance was regarded as such that the 9K required a fighter escort when it was used. The massive recoil generated by this weapon also created oil and coolant leaks over time, and it's for these reasons that the 9K was considered quite impractical, and it was given only a limited production run. Next is the Yak-3, battle rating 4.0. This was a lighter and smaller Yak-1 with a VK-105 PF2 engine developing 1300 horsepower. It had an excellent power-to-weight ratio, a better power-to-weight ratio in fact than the 109 G6, and better than, or at least as good as, the 190 D9s. This very good ratio gave it a very impressive climb rate and speed and agility, The French ace Marcel Albert preferred it to the P-51D and Spitfire. Next is the 3P, battle rating 4.3. This began production in April 45. It's essentially a Yak-3 upgun with triple 20mm, one in the nose and two in the engine cowling. By August 1945, the 3P configuration had become the standard production design. Next is a Yak-9U. This is a Yak-9 fitted with a VK107A engine, which developed 1650 horsepower. It had a new all-metal wing with a longer span, which improved stability and lift. It was armed with twin heavy machine guns and a single Shevak. Test flight showed that it was similar in performance to the I-185, but it was easier to fly and more agile due to the lighter weight. The more powerful engine required improved cooling, so the wing root mounted coolers were enlarged and the scoop under the fuselage was enlarged. It was considered the best high-altitude fighter in the Soviet arsenal, and when it was produced and first introduced, it was considered the fastest aircraft in the world, and tests proved this. It was capable of 700 kilometers an hour at just over 5,500 meters. Next is the 9P, battle rating 5.0. This is a 9U with increased firepower, twin 20 mils, two in the cowling, one in the nose. Otherwise it's the same. Next to the UT, battle rating 5.7. This is a 9U that was adapted for use with a number of different weapons, such as the NS-23, 37 and 45. Otherwise, much the same. Next is the Yak-15, the first jet engine in the line, Tier 5, battle rating 5.7. This is a Yak-3 airframe modified to accept a reverse-engineered Junkers Jumo 004, taken from the Me-262. It was mounted beneath the fuselage, and a heat shield was added beneath the fuselage to help reduce the damage caused by heat. It had twin NS-23s in the nose, and a slightly enlarged vertical stabilizer over the original Yak-3. After it became obsolete, it was used as a trainer for pilots making the transition from prop to jet. Compared to the 262, it was only half the weight, so it climbed faster, but it also had half the power, so it had a lower top speed. The 15P is identical, except one of the cannons has been removed. Next is the Yak-17, the final aircraft in the line. This was a development of the Yak-15, but it had a new tricycle landing gear system, which improved the pilot's visibility on the ground and also improved stability. The aircraft wouldn't nose over if the pilot braked hard. But this move of the landing gear meant that the rear two wheels had to be moved backwards to compensate for the move in the centre of gravity. This meant the rear wheels would raise into the area where the fuel tanks previously were, so this meant that extra fuel had to be added to wing tanks to counter for that. The vertical stabilizer was again enlarged slightly to improve stability, and the wings were strengthened to support the extra weight of the fuel tanks, otherwise essentially identical to the Yak-15. Well, that's the Yak fighters in War Thunder. Thank you for watching. See you soon.